Wasim, welcome to us.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
So we agreed that I can call you Wasim, but Dr. Twitter or the Twitter doctor, the YouTube doctor, and for me, the symptoms doctor, the symptoms expert. We know you from Twitter and YouTube, of course, but also from the Norwegian television show called What's Wrong With You, or Hva feiler det deg? Where you interpret symptoms. And I have to ask you first, Wasim, a question we have asked all our guests today. What does mental health means to you?
Well, I think it's a very broad term, and because it encompasses so much, and it is used by so many different people, different professions. In the media, they talk a lot about mental health, and that could be about anything from well-being or psychological ways to improve yourself in those terms. And then you have the more like psychological and psychiatric diseases like anxiety or depression, and even the more severe ones like psychosis and schizophrenia. So it's actually a very broad term. And for me as a healthcare worker, I mostly deal with that end of the spectrum, which deals with the diseases like or the different psychological conditions where we make the diagnosis and initiate treatment, follow up patients. Not so much about the other part about well-being, which is also important, but at least for me as a doctor, that's the end of the spectrum on which I have my work.
Yeah, and that's also the area where we have focused today. So we don't have any mental coaches or motivational speakers today. We have professionals talking about, and peers and friends talking about their own experiences, but professionals in your profession, the medical profession. When we prepared for this session, Wasim, we talked about this stigma around mental health or psychiatric illness or whatever you want to call it. Do you have any idea why it's so scary to talk about depression and anxiety, schizophrenia, stuff, the concrete things like that?
Well, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, but it is. You're absolutely right about that. And I think it has something to do with that whenever you're talking about mental conditions, it's much more personal. Because, if you have heart disease or if you have arthritis or even cancer, there's this kind of a distance between yourself, your personality and that disease. But when you're talking about mental diseases, they actually affect you as a person, your personality, or it kind of gets connected much more to your identity. So it's much more personal, I think. And also I think has been, unfortunately, historically and traditionally, many people have perceived mental illness as maybe a personal weakness, maybe you're sick because it's your fault, you're not strong enough to deal with problems of life. So that has been kind of an attitude in society, and probably also in the medical society for many years. Gladly, it's not the case anymore. But I think that's kind of the reason why there are still taboos about this. People are reluctant to be open about their diseases. It's much easier to say that, my back is hurting today, so I might not come into office. But you're not expected to say that, I feel sad today, I can't work. So I think talks like this, I've been listening to some of the other speakers, I think they're so important for removing these taboos and creating more openness and a more open environment at workplaces to talk about these things more openly.
That's good. And we have had a open chat throughout the day so far, and the chat is still open, so you're welcome to still send in some questions, and we'll try to get to them. But one of the things that has come throughout the chat is regarding this openness. And we have people, and I can recognize myself as well, you try to appear strong.
Yeah.
But when you finally have a breakdown, people don't trust you. because you seem so strong, and we have colleagues telling us that they experienced this in a meeting with a primary physician as well, or the GP. How can we help ourselves to be that strong that we can tell about our weakness?
Yeah, I think that's a great challenge. And I was actually thinking about this before I came. How good, I mean, I'm preaching this, but how good am I actually myself? And I thought whenever I'm at work, I want to portray myself as a strong and healthy person. I want to portray myself as mentally strong. You know, I'm able to handle these difficult situations with acutely ill patients. I want to perceive myself, and I want others to perceive me as this strong leader in a team of doctors who can take these decisions about, you know, serious things. So that's the kind of image I want to portray of myself. So I had to admit to myself that even though I'm, you know, talking about, you know, being open about your weaknesses, I'm not that open about them, and that kind of dawned on me. So I think that first of all, you just have to make that realization that, you know, you need actually to try to be open about it. You just have to accept that for a start. And you know, if we can all do that at a workplace or in a community, that will create a better and more accepting environment for people to actually be open and honest about their feelings, about their mental issues. So that's what actually, at least what I've been thinking about myself, is that you kind of have to be a bit daring. You have to be a bit brave to take that first step. But I think what will happen is that people will actually, you know, respond by saying that, oh, this is what I've been feeling as well. So I've been having the same issues. So by being the brave first person and taking that step, you will actually create a better environment for others and ultimately also for yourself later on.
Yeah.
I think that, but it is, I know it's difficult. It's easy to say, but it's difficult to be the first one to know, to come out and be open about these things.
Yeah. And we also discussed that earlier today, that it's easy to tell and try to help others take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say to people, please put on your own mask before you help others. But it's not so easy to do it on yourself. So I think what you said about accepting it yourself first, that's the first step.
Yeah.
And openness will foster openness.
Yeah.
So someone is open, but at the same time, we're talking about this work-life balance. That's the new, and the hybrid work and stuff like that. I guess we have a lot of colleagues, or some colleagues at least, who just want to go to work and work. That's it. They are not interested in listening to others' problems, and they're not interested in telling about themselves, their own problems. So what do you think a day like this?
Yeah, I think that's a strategy that might work for some time, but we're all humans. And you know, as David said just before us, life is, you know, things happen in life, and sooner or later you're bound to run into problems and challenges, and then I think you'd wish that you'd been more open before, or you'd been more accommodating to your colleagues and their feelings, because then you'll be in a position where you will need your colleagues. And you know, the workplace is. I would strongly urge anyone watching, you know, don't try to treat your workplace or your professional life as something completely detached from your personal life. I mean, of course, there is a difference between your profession and your personal life, but you know, life is life. You are the same person, even though you are sitting here in this office or in your living room with your family. You're still the same person, and we spend so much time of our lives at our workplaces that, you know, it's a significant chunk of your life. It's a significant chunk of what you are like every day. So I would strongly urge people to, you know, of course, be professional when you're at work, but don't think that this is not a place where you cannot be expressive about your feelings, about your issues. You should be able to do that.
Yeah, and that leads us to one of the comments that came in right now. Should we be open about everything? Or should we have some kind of filter, privacy filter?
Well, I mean, when you say everything, that could be anything.
Yeah.
I think that's not the point. I think that at least when it comes to our mental health, and of course, we should not force someone to be open about something they don't want to be open about. It has to be genuine. You have to really feel like being open about something. But I think, again, we should create an environment where we accommodate people who are willing to be open. Our colleagues, our workers should feel that it is safe to be open here. They should feel they shouldn't fear that they will get demoted or fired or something like that. They should feel that it should be completely safe for them to come out and talk about whatever problems they may have. And openness is a good thing, honesty is a good thing, but everyone has his or her own limits as to what they want to share about, and we should also respect that.
Yeah, good. I'm curious because I watched some of your YouTube channels or your YouTube movies, films. And
I'm so glad you said YouTube movies. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, that's good. And in one of them, you talk about anxiety.
Yeah.
And anxiety is one of the terms which also depressed, especially the youth today, can say, "Oh, I'm so depressed today," because it's hard to get up. Anxiety is also a broad term.
Yeah.
First of all, what is anxiety to you, if I'm allowed to ask?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I would say that anxiety is as a medical term is quite precisely defined. So when we as health professionals talk about anxiety as a mental illness, we know exactly what we're talking about. Now, of course, when you're speaking in layman's terms, it means much more. People would use that, about some common fear that they may have. That's not anxiety. Anxiety for me is, from a health perspective, from a medical perspective, is that when you do have a fear of something, but it is so overthrowing, it's so overarching over yourself that it kind of prevents you from doing normal things in life. So it has a very significant effect on your everyday living, and you understand that it may be irrational, but still you're not able to do something about it. It's just so overpowering. So, and there are many different types of anxieties. Some people have, may have anxiety for talks like this. They feel it's uncomfortable. They're afraid of that. You can have a fear of heights, which can be so overpowering that you never go up in a building. For me personally, I actually have some experience with anxiety because I have quite a severe case of claustrophobia, which means that I'm very afraid of tight spaces. Like if I go into an elevator and my heart will start racing a bit, I will feel uncomfortable. I may start thinking that what if these doors never open? What if I can't get out? I may feel some, tightness in my chest. And the smaller the space, the worse the symptoms. I remember one time I had a shoulder injury and I had to go into one of these MRI machines. And they're like very narrow tunnels. And I knew that I had this problem. So when I went into this machine, and the roof of this tunnel was right above my face here. And I felt that I could not breathe. And I also started getting, I was sure that I saw that this roof above my face was starting to melt and, like come onto me on my face and prevent me from breathing. It got so uncomfortable that I considered, aborting the whole checkup. So, and for people who don't have claustrophobia, they might feel that, why it's not it's not dangerous, you're going to get out. But that's the thing with anxiety, that even though that rationally you can understand that it's not correct to be afraid of this, it just becomes so overpowering that you're not able to deal with that. So that, for me at least, is anxiety.
Yeah. And I think you're, at least my understanding as well, you're into one of the key commodities or one of the shared topics when it comes to mental illness, and that is rational versus irrational.
Yeah.
And it's hard to diverse them. As you said, you know rationally, and as a realist, you know that the MRI machine is not breaking down at the moment. But your feelings.
Yeah, you can't control the feelings.
No.
Yeah.
You mentioned your heart as well when you talked about claustrophobia, and you as a cardiologist, the connection between the heart and mental health. That is just not something that we talk about and we can feel, but it's an actual connection.
Oh, it's a very deep connection, on so many levels. I could give you so many examples. Previously, we had this divide between mental issues and physical issues, as if these two things are not connected. Obviously, they're very connected. So we know that mental issues affect other diseases in the body, and other diseases in the body can also affect mental diseases. We know that people with chronic depression are at much higher risk of developing cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and we also know that people with cancer or muscle and skeletal issues and any other condition, really chronic conditions, they are more prone to getting mental illnesses like depression. So there's a very strong connection, and I think it's easy to understand. Whenever you're afraid, you feel immediately, that your heart starts racing, even though the feeling of being afraid is something that arises in the brain. The brain then sends signals to the heart and makes it beat faster. Your blood pressure rises due to that. And also, I mean, there is this. You mentioned me as a cardiologist.
Yeah.
There's actually this condition in the cardiology field that's called Takotsubo syndrome, and Takotsubo is like this contraption they used to have in Japan in order to catch squids. And the reason this condition is called a Takotsubo syndrome is that in some people, particularly elderly women, if they are faced with some sort of severe emotional trauma, like, it could be a fight with your husband or wife, it could be a divorce, it could be losing some, loved one, which can have such severe impact on your mental condition that it actually generates a kind of heart failure. And you can actually see that if you do an ultrasound of a heart of such a patient, you can see that there are parts of the heart that actually has stopped contracting. So it's a very visual condition, and when you examine the heart, you check the arteries, you do the other tests. There is nothing physical wrong with the heart. It's really just a response of very strong mental stress. So that again, goes to show how strong the connection between the brain and the rest of the body is.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that that this is actually a realistic, rational connection between the mental health and the heart.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
My general physician gave me beta blockers to help with my anxiety. So instead of psychopharmaca, which were with a red triangle, so I couldn't drive when I took them. So instead, I could have beta blockers, and so it's good to know that this is not just some irrational feeling that it helps, but there's a rationality.
Yeah, beta blockers are, those are real heart medicines.
Yeah.
So what they do is that they lower your blood pressure and also your heart rate. So at least those medications would take away some of the symptoms. Of course, they will not cure your mental issues. That you have to, take care of in some other way, but at least we can give you something to take away some of those, awful symptoms that you might have with your heart racing very powerfully. So we
Yeah.
can help you with that.
And then we are going into a very interesting area where we also got some questions, and that's how to get out of it when you are facing mental issues. We have peers asking, how can I explain this to my general physician or my fastlege in a best way so I can get help? My psychologist didn't work. What kind of help can I have? And so psychopharmaca, of course, that's one thing. Psychologist, one thing. What do you think of helping yourself or helping yourself being helped?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there are, of course, several different stages, and depending on how severe your condition is, you're going to need help at some different level. There are things you can do yourself, of course. We know that when it comes to depression, if you have a very mild depression, it's always very helpful to talk to good friends or family, people you trust. Just speak about your feelings, what makes you sad, why you're feeling sad. That can help. For a lot of people, physical activity, going for a walk, going for a run, exercising at the gym can be beneficial. Trying to eat a generally healthy diet can be helpful. And then, of course, your disease may reach a level at which these things, of course, are still important, but you need something more in order to get further. And I would suggest that if you're feeling, the question was, what should I say to my doctor? Go and say just what you're feeling. Don't worry about, saying the right things in order to make your doctor understand. Your doctor will understand. We are trained to deal with these things. Just go and use your own words. You don't have to use technical terms. You don't have to use, scientific words. Use your own words to describe what you're feeling. That is the best thing. That's when your doctor will really understand what you're going through. And then, of course, for some, it may be necessary to go on medication. And a lot of the psychopharmaca do not have a red triangle on them, so you can function normally, you can drive, you can work, even though you're on those medications. For some patients, it can be, necessary with psychological therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And then, of course, we have more severe cases where you need much more advanced treatment at a psychiatric hospital.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is, to summarize it, it's being honest, first of all, with yourself, and then being honest with those around you and your general physician, which is the kind of, I won't call it the gatekeeper, but at least the first point of contact for most.
For a lot of people coming from abroad, and I'm guessing some of our viewers maybe have background from other countries, and they may feel that the Norwegian system is a bit strange. But here in Norway, at least, it is correct that your general physician, what we call the fastlege, is the gatekeeper to the healthcare system. So that is where you go for most things. And it will be your doctor's job to, sort out what you need and where to refer you. So it's always a good idea to start at your general physician, at your fastlege.
Yeah, and of course we also have in Norway and in Microsoft as well. We have channels, and we will get back to them at the end of the day. But where you can seek specific help also through the health insurance to get a specialist treatment for at least a period of time.
Yeah.
So, but when you go to your general physician or fastlege, and you as a symptoms expert, as I called you in the beginning, Wasim. How do you, or when do you interpret symptoms and think there is something here which might be mental?
Well, if you're talking about the diagnostic process, it's always about recognizing patterns. So I know what the symptoms are for different diseases, and if a patient starts to talk and tells that he or she has those and those said symptoms, that would put me on a track. I would suspect, okay, maybe this could be a depression, and I would prefer the patient to do most of the talking and give me, the information without me interrupting. But then at some point, I might, throw in a few questions in order to either make it more probable or less probable what the correct diagnosis is. So when it comes to, for instance, depression, the symptoms that we look out for is that, first of all, there is this feeling of sadness. You feel sad. Being sad or, experiencing sorrow is not depression. Depression is when, it just stretches out in time and the sadness and the feeling of sadness does not go away. And then they may experience a feeling of emptiness inside, that they don't see a meaning in things, they don't see the importance in different things, and especially when they feel that they don't want to do anything. You feel that you don't want to go out and do stuff. You don't want to go and visit someone. You don't want to go to work. So this feeling of not wanting to do stuff, and also it may be. It may affect your sleeping patterns. You may not be getting the sleep that you need. You're laying awake at night just thinking about stuff. Some people tend to isolate themselves from others. It may also affect your eating patterns. Some people may stop eating or eat less. They don't have, and especially we see that things that used to be fun are no longer experienced as fun. So let's say you have a hobby, you're interested in photography, that gives you lots of joy, but then suddenly or gradually you lose interest in that. You don't find the joy of going out in the woods and taking photos of birds or whatever. So when those changes come, that is when I would certainly suspect that there's a clinical depression going on. And I would then, of course, ask more questions in order to get closer to the correct diagnosis.
Yeah. We've got a question from one of the viewers related to symptoms as well, cabin fever. And that is, I think some of us has experienced that throughout the pandemic. Cabin fever, like we are being isolated. There is, you're almost maybe feeling kind of claustrophobic inside your own home because you're not allowed to go out. Could that be a connection there to mental health?
Well, by cabin fever, I understand that you're restricted to your home. You're not able to go out, and people handle that very differently. For a lot of people, or for most of us, being social is very important. Seeing your friends, seeing your family, seeing colleagues. We are social people. And not being able to do that, and also being social, having good friends, having good family terms, is protective towards mental diseases. So when you lose that network and you're restricted to your own home, you cannot go out, you cannot see your friends, you cannot see your colleagues, that may, for some people, at least if they are disposed in some way, trigger an episode of depression or anxiety. We've seen that. On the other hand, we've also seen that most of us are able to tackle that being alone at home, and especially now that we have a lot of other channels to communicate with others digitally. So some of those needs are being fulfilled. And still, we have some people that have actually said that it's been good for them to be by themselves, to kind of get free from that pressure that comes with, some people feel that they feel pressured to be social. And maybe they're introverts, maybe they don't get their energy by being with other people. There are a lot of us that we get our energy from being alone. And for them, this cabin fever thing may even have been beneficial. But for most people, being social is important. And if you're restricted from that, that may, of course, trigger some health issues.
You mentioned introvert.
Yeah.
That's not the diagnosis in ICD-10, at least.
No.
And then we are into an exciting topic, the difference between personality and illness. because being an introvert or extrovert, for that sake, is not a mental illness.
No.
So,
Yes, that's important for me to say. I hope nobody felt that.
Yeah.
Being extrovert or introvert or ambivert, I think most people are a mixture of those.
Yeah.
So those are just traits of
Yeah.
your personality, and in order to be called an illness, I think it has to impair your functioning level. It has to cause you some kind of some symptoms, mental or physical. So no, of course not. Being an introvert is perfectly normal for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm one of those that I've told my story before today or earlier today, Wasim, and I suffer with depression still, but I also have a personality where I love to be on stage.
Yeah.
So going out with customers, I just love it. But I hate my own birthday, and that's more of a personality type. So you won't find my birthday on Facebook. It's only my kids that are allowed to say congratulations on that day.
Really?
Because I really hate it.
Okay.
I don't like the personal attention, but the attention around what I'm doing, I just love it.
So if someone was to celebrate, like, oh, Martin has achieved this thing on his work today, it's been a long time coming, we're going to have some cake today, so you wouldn't like that, or would you
Yeah,
like?
that's because that's something I did.
Yeah,
Something I achieved at work.
okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But if it's...
Being born is not exactly your accomplishment.
No, it's not.
I
Definitely
understand.
not.
Okay.
That's my failure, maybe.
No, not at all.
But we had this discussion between personality and illness, and if we go into the autism specter
Yeah.
diseases, that is overrepresented in our business,
Okay.
in the IT business, especially on the development side, maybe. And I think a lot of people think about autism, they think Big Bang Theory, the TV show,
Okay.
or Rain Man, the movie.
Yeah.
But as a lot of these illnesses we are talking about, it's a scale here.
Yes.
And
All diseases are actually.
yeah. So do you have any tips if you feel different? How should I go into investigating that closer?
Yeah, that is a very important and a big question, actually, because on one side we don't want to medicalize every single feeling. Just because you feel different doesn't have to mean that you have a medical condition. There is a huge variation, both in we talked about scales. There are scales and specters in disease. And there are also scales and specters in normalcy. There's a huge variation in human beings, fortunately, so this is very difficult. On one side, I do want to encourage people to if they feel there's something wrong, I do want them to explore that and be open about that and figure it out. On the other hand, I don't want people to feel that every time there is something difficult in life or if you feel something different that necessarily has to be a disease. So that's a difficult balance for us healthcare workers. But I think going back to when we started the talk, I think the solution to even that is again openness and honesty. So if you feel that something is wrong, if you feel that you're different, talk to someone. Doesn't have to be your doctor right away. Talk to your friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parents, your siblings, or maybe a doctor or a psychologist. Just talk to someone. And I think just by doing that, a lot of people will quickly discover whether there is something to move forward with in order to get a diagnosis and treatment, or whether this is just part of a normal variation.
Yeah.
So, but you have to start by being open and talk with someone, and then take it from there.
I think this is important, Wasim, that being different is not the same as being ill.
Yeah, of course.
So that's a very important topic. We've got another question regarding social media.
Yeah.
And the connection between maybe the overuse or addiction to social media and mental health.
Yeah. There is a strong connection, for sure. And being a social media personality, I contribute to that. the problem with, I mean, there have been a lot of talk about this. Is the comparison that we do on social media. When you're, looking at your Facebook or your Instagram stream, you see a lot of happy people. You see perfect dinners. You see people going out. You see people exercising. Everything is positive, and that is not because everybody's life is perfect. That's simply because that is what they choose to show. And even though I know that, when I'm watching Instagram, at a subconscious level, it affects me because I do feel that everyone is happy except for me. Everyone is going on holidays except for me. Even though I know that that's not the case, but still I'm not able to break free from those thoughts, and I let myself affect of those streams on social media. So, I mean, I love social media. I think they're a great tool. What would I can't imagine a life without them, but it is the overuse, and it is trying to be trying to just tell yourself that this what you're seeing here is not a representative reality. It's a very selective reality, and you don't have to put yourself down just because your reality does not match those of the reality of your Instagram stream.
Yeah.
So I think that's the case. Well, there is a strong connection, and there have been studies showing that social media can have a detrimental effect on mental health.
Yeah. And I also want to address another point when it comes to social media. It was a couple of years ago a hot topic, and the topic there was trigger warning. That there is some hidden back channels in the social media platforms, Instagram, for example, where especially the youth, because those understand social media much better than we do.
Yeah, sure.
And they share stories about their own mental diseases and kind of triggers each other to go even further, even further, even further.
Yeah. I think that may be the case for a lot of people or some people, but I'm kind of a bit ambiguous about this trigger warning thing, because if you're saying that we need trigger warnings in order to warn people that this content may be not good for you, if that's the case, then I would say that, well, then even a trigger warning in itself can be triggering. So where do you stop?
Yeah.
And I think that I got actually a question from a journalist just before I came here. She was writing a story about an influencer who, when she was young, just 14 years old, was told that she's flat-chested, that she didn't, have breasts, and she was so affected by that she actually took a kitchen knife and sliced one of her breasts, and were planning to put in some sort of implant by herself at home, which is, of course, never do that. Never do that. The journalist asked me, well, what can we do? I mean, what can we tell the youth? And I felt that, in a way, we have the society has a responsibility. What are we showing? What are media has a responsibility. The fashion industry has a responsibility. Like, they have to think through what are they actually showing and portraying, and what kind of effect does that have on young minds. So that is important. At the same time, I also feel that we as individuals have some responsibility to make ourselves robust enough so that we can face these things in media and in the fashion industry without letting it affect us to that extent. So I, as a father, have some responsibility towards, making my children strong and robust so they can go out in society and tackle these things. And I also think that we as individuals have some responsibility. We have to tell ourselves that we should not let ourselves be affected by these things. But I will say, the biggest responsibility lies with those who are broadcasting these things.
Yeah. And I think I totally agree with you, Wasim. Where should we stop with these trigger warnings? We could have a trigger warning on this show.
Yeah.
We could have a trigger warning in our lives with a big sign in our forehead.
Yeah.
We are all trigger warnings potentially. So I totally agree with you. Wasim, this has been really interesting, and our time is running out.
Oh no.
Yeah, this has
We're
been
just getting warmed
awesome.
up.
Yeah, definitely. So I just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts as a medical professional, as a human being, and as Wasim. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. I would love to come back sometime.
You're very welcome.